Information, please. Presented each week at this time by Canada Dry, famous the world over for its fine beverages. Wake up, America. Time to stump the experts and enjoy a glass of refreshing Canada Dry ginger ale. Every week at this time, Canada Dry puts on a quiz program in reverse. 4 experts are furnished for you to try to stump. This is the way it is done. For every question we use, whether or not it's answered correctly, the sender gets $5. And if your question stumps our board of experts, you not only get $10 more, but in addition, you receive a complete 24-volume set of the current Encyclopedia Britannica. Mind you, this is only if your question stumps our board of experts. Our editorial staff may reword your question a trifle. Don't worry about it. Whenever there is a duplication of questions, Information Please uses the one that was received first. All questions become the property of Information Please and should be addressed to Canada Dry, 1 Pershing Square, New York City, or in Canada, Canada Dry, Toronto. And now may I present our Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Clifton Fadiman, literary critic of the New Yorker magazine. Mr. Fadiman.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again we bring you Information Please, which is still the same unprepared, unrehearsed program it's always been. Our panel of experts this time consists of 2 old-timers and 2 guests. The old-timers are, of course, Franklin P. Adams, famous writer of light verse and prose and conductor of the Conning Tower in the New York Post, and his indomitable sidekick, John Kieran, the sports expert with the elastic memory. The 2 guests are Deems Taylor, who has been with us before and is well known to all of you as musician, composer, radio commentator, and writer on musical subjects. Our other guest is Major George Fielding Eliot, noted military commentator and author of The Ramparts We Watch and other books on military subjects. Now remember, listeners, for each question that's missed, Canada Dry rings up $10, and that's paid out to the sender, plus 24 volumes of the latest edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Marion Schooler of Tacoma Park, Maryland, wants you to answer all in the following question. What are these? Boogie Woogie, Fuzzy Wuzzy, and Hugger Mugger. Shall we start with Boogie Woogie? Mr. Taylor on Boogie Woogie.
It's a kind of piano playing.
Can you describe it for us a little more specifically?
Well, it's rather difficult. It's a sort of arpeggiated, syncopated
that
bass.
Is as clear as can be so far.
I mean, that practically gives you the idea of...
what was the last phrase you used, Mr. Taylor?
Arpeggiated and syncopated.
I don't think I can contradict you.
Well, you probably can't.
No, that sounds right. It's, what sort of music, though, in terms of mood?
What's a mood?
Yeah.
I should say approximately jazz.
Yes, swing, music.
Swing, jazz.
What does one hand do while the other hand is doing something else, Mr. Taylor?
They seldom know.
Well, isn't one hand playing the bass?
One hand is playing the bass, going its own sweet way, and the other hand is playing what's called what's supposed to be the tune.
Yes, that is Boogie Woogie.
Boogie Woogie.
And you have no idea how the term arose?
No, except that I don't like it.
Well, it's too late to do anything about that now. It's just going to be called Boogie
yeah.
Woogie. Now, how about Fuzzy Wuzzy? Fuzzy Wuzzy, Major Eliot.
Fuzzy Wuzzy is a term applied by Kipling and presumably by Tommy Atkins to the natives of the Sudan during the Sudan campaigns in the 80s and 90s.
Nothing could be more precise than that answer, Major Eliot. And why were the Sudanese called Fuzzy Wuzzy?
Because they used to do their hair and with grease and so on, so it stuck out all around their heads and looked very fuzzy and supposed to terrify
a little
their
wuzzy.
enemies.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And a little wuzzy, yeah.
Do you remember any part of the poem in which Kipling makes the Fuzzy Wuzzies immortal, Mr. Kieran?
here's
Do you
to
remember?
you.
Well, At your home in the Sudan.
Go ahead. Mr. Adams.
You're a first-class fighting man.
Here's to you, Fuzzy Wuzzy,
something
because you
heathen.
broke a pretty square.
That's very good. Well, among the 3 of you did pretty well. I called on Mr. Kieran.
Who didn't answer?
How about Hugger Mugger? Hugger Mugger. Oh, that's very easy, Hugger Mugger. Mr. Kieran.
Well, it's something akin to a hurly-burly. It's a rather mixed-up fray of some kind.
Nothing to do with necking, has it?
I don't think so, Mr. Taylor. Yes, confusion, hurly-burly, or another meaning of it is privacy and secrecy. Well, that gives us Boogie Woogie, Fuzzy Wuzzy, and Hugger Mugger to carry home with us this evening, and leads us on to the next question from S. Thomas of Philadelphia. Answer these. We have to get 2 out of 3. First, what is the difference between strategy and tactics? The difference between strategy and tactics. Major Eliot.
Strategy is the
I had an
art
idea,
of
Major Eliot, you'd
the,
answer this one.
maneuvering armed forces in the theater of operations, and is generally applied to those phases of operations prior to contact. Tactics is the art of maneuvering forces on the battlefield, especially during the phase of operations when they are in contact with the enemy.
Yes. Major, could a general be a great strategist without being a good tactician, or vice versa?
Yes, Grant was a great strategist, but he was never so hot as a tactician.
Oh, that's tough on Grant. Mr. Kieran.
Ex-Corporal Kieran would like to venture the opinion that strategy is a plan and tactics is the carrying out of that plan.
Do you accept that, Major Eliot?
That's a very sound point of view. Because
Why don't you raise him from being an ex-corporal to a corporal, then? Mr. Taylor.
Isn't strategy deciding that the way to win the war is capture Berlin, and tactics is deciding how you're going to capture Berlin?
That's putting it very
strategical
concretely.
field there.
That's making it clear even to me, Mr. Taylor.
All right.
Now, what is
Strategy is special and tactics is general. Is that right?
That's right.
Why didn't you say so?
Well, now I think I've heard from all of you, gentlemen. Unless we get a word or two from the studio.
We ought to be
piano.
in the
Our
war
strategy
college.
was good there, all right.
But our tactics
Better than
were
our
terrible.
tactics.
Adams and...
Yes.
you finished, haven't you?
Yes, teacher.
All right, now we're going to go on to the next question. What is the difference between a motorized unit and a mechanized unit? Major Eliot.
A motorized unit is a unit in which all of the personnel and equipment is carried in motor vehicles. A mechanized unit is a unit in which the personnel fights from armored and armed motor vehicles,
Yes.
such as tanks or armored cars.
Mr. Adams, is that all right with you, or do you want to tell me something about general in particular again?
I was listening then.
All right, good. Now, gentlemen, the third of these military questions. What is the nearest air base to the American continent that is under European control, and how far away is it by air? Is that clear, Mr. Kieran?
I think where it is. It's up off Alaska, and it's controlled by Russia.
Yes, that's right. What part of Russia would that be, near Alaska?
Well, it's across the Bering Strait there.
In what?
Siberia.
In Siberia. It's well in Siberia.
And it's very close. I think it's something, at a guess, around 100 miles away from United States territory.
About 40 minutes by air, apparently, from Nome, Alaska. And
That's a slow plane.
apparently, a German military mission was reported at this Russian air base only a little while ago, on February 7th, 1940. Well, that gives us 3 out of 3. Very correct responses by the veterans this evening. Mrs. George Sipple of Lehighton, Pennsylvania, wants to know the answers to the following. We have to get 2 out of 3 on this. In what literary work did a member of the animal kingdom launch the hero on a successful career? Major Eliot.
Kim?
I beg pardon?
Kim?
Is there
Rudyard Kipling?
is there a what member of the animal kingdom launched Kim on a successful career? I don't
Wasn't
remember.
there a panther engaged in this?
I don't believe so.
I think there was.
It's a good guess, but I don't think it's true. Mr. Taylor.
Well, there was Dick Whittington's cat, but
Yes.
what's
Yes.
the work, though? If Adams would tell me the work, I could.
Well,
we could
it's
split
called
the
Dick
answer
Whittington's
between
cat.
us.
The work is called Dick Whittington's cat, or the cat of Dick Whittington. If you
If
want
I'd
to be
only
elegant.
kept my mouth shut, it would have been all right.
Well, you were all
Launched
right.
him
That's
as
the
Lord
correct
Mayor of London.
response.
That's it.
I knew there was a cat in it somewhere.
Yeah.
In what literary work did a
Yeah.
member of the animal kingdom cause the heroine to break a rule? Cause the heroine to break a rule. Mr. Adams.
Mary's lamb
Mary's lamb caused Mary to break what rule, Mr. Adams?
against giggling in school.
Well, I don't...
It made the children laugh and play.
Yes, but I think the rule was that you must not bring lambs to school.
He followed her to school one day,
That's
which was
right,
against the
Mr.
rule.
Taylor. Yes.
Following was against the rule.
Yeah. Following to school was against.
Well, is this all news to you, Mr. Adams, that it's against the rule to carry lambs to school?
It followed her, which was against the rule. Following was against the rule.
Following was... It's all right to have the lamb in school, but not to have the lamb follow her to school.
Right.
What a life you must live being as precise as all that, Mr. Adams.
Well, look at
In
it.
what literary work, gentlemen, did a member of the animal kingdom direct a man to his girl? Direct a man to his girl. Well, we're all right. We have 2 out of 3 on this, but you should know it.
An elephant.
An elephant. Don't quite follow you.
He
Mr.
never
Adams.
forgot her address.
You're just making up this story as
Just
you go
making
along.
it up. I think it's pretty good,
It's
too.
very
Story by
Very
F.P.
good.
Adams. I mean,
Mr. Taylor, you don't know the answer to this, do you?
it begins to look as if I didn't.
No. Have you listened to Siegfried recently?
Oh, that bird, huh?
That bird, yes.
Oh,
the bird
yes.
directed whom to whom?
Hey, the bird directed Siegfried to, what's her name, Brunhilde.
Yes, to Brunhilde. You didn't remember that, though, until I hinted it.
No, because it's usually a soprano, and I don't never connect sopranos with members of the animal kingdom.
It is a soprano, yes, that's right. That gives us 2 out of 3.
I wouldn't
which
be
is just
so
about
indelicate.
the best we could do on that one. P. Lane of Boston sends in the following. We have to get 2 out of 2 on this. You're going to hear, gentlemen, the beginnings of 2 operatic arias. You have to identify the arias and tell me what happens while the music is being played. Let's have the first. That's the irrepressible Mr. Adams. Mr. Kieran,
That's a quartet from Rigoletto.
now what is happening during
They're
that
sitting in
quartet?
a
Who is?
tavern.
Who?
Well, the villain is
Name your villain.
Rigoletto.
Mr. Taylor,
The Duke is sitting in the tavern.
doing what?
Well, he's, after all, this is a family program, but
Well, he is making love to Madalena. Do you
if
remember
you
that?
want to put it that way, yes.
That's the way I prefer to put it,
in
Mr.
your
Taylor.
crude fashion.
Subject to your
And
censorship.
outside,
Outside.
Rigoletto and his daughter, Gilda,
Yes.
are sitting and listening.
Oh, more than that.
They're at least they're listening.
Well, if they're listening, how does this become a quartet?
Well, they're also commenting.
Oh, they're also singing.
Well, that's what I mean. They're commenting.
That's
They're,
it.
That's
And what
operatic.
does
for
there seem anything
commenting.
peculiar to you about this scene?
Well, it's a little idiotic.
Yes, that's just about what I was going to say myself. It's a little idiotic for the 2 who are supposed to be overhearing the others
Two
to
grown
join the
people to
quartet.
sit out there, yes.
But everything
I'll
goes.
tell you what
in
else happens. I go to sleep.
I don't go.
Oh, Mr. Taylor. Very good. Now we're going to hear another operatic aria, and you're asked to identify it and tell us about it. No response from any of you gentlemen?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it, Mr. Taylor?
It's either Martha or the Bohemian Girl.
Well, name 3 or 4 more. You may hit it, Mr. Adams.
I vote for one of those.
Well, you're wrong. Awfully sorry. It's from Verdi's Il Trovatore.
Oh, no wonder I
Do you
didn't
get it
know.
now, Mr. Taylor?
No.
No.
Why?
No
What's
wonder.
wrong with it? I
I
think
only
the studio
saw it
pianist
once.
played that very well.
I know he did.
You remember, it's Manrico stopping to sing a 5-minute aria describing the fire after people have rushed in to tell him that his lady friend is being burned to death. Remember
yes,
that, Mr. Taylor?
de quella pira.
Yeah, De Quella
But
Pira.
you
It's all
remember
right
the
for you
two
to say it in
black
Italian, but
crows,
you didn't get it
Moran
right.
and Mac? When one of them said I wouldn't like it even if it was good?
That's the one.
Yeah,
But
that's
still, that gives us 1 wrong out of 2 and
Yes.
loses $10 going to
cover that
Mr.
up.
Lane of Boston, Massachusetts. Boston Encyclopedia. P. Walsh of Detroit, Michigan, sends in the following question. Quote 3 of the 11 general orders for sentinels in the United States Army. Well, Mr. Kieran had his hand up like an old war horse.
One
Mr.
is
Kieran.
the first is to walk his post in a military manner.
Yes. Well, you ever called down for not doing so, Mr. Kieran?
Oh, no, I was always commended for doing so.
That gives us 1. Mr. Major Eliot.
Observe everything that takes place within sight or hearing.
That's right. That's 2. Mr. Kieran.
To allow nobody to commit a nuisance upon his post.
Don't know that I have that. Well, something like that.
Yes.
Major Eliot, another one?
Case of fire disturbance to call the guard.
Yes, that's right. To talk to no one except in line of duty. There are a number of others. To salute all officers and all colors and
Not
standards.
cased. All colors and standards not cased.
Not cased. Oh, you remember this from your old days,
To
apparently.
say
Major.
advance 1 and give the countersign.
You learned that out of a book, Mr. Adams. It's not in the 11
I learned
general
all
orders.
those things out of a book.
Obey all orders from the commanding officer, officers
Not
and
very
non-commissioned
well.
officers of the guard only.
That's right, Major. What can you do with this one? This comes from Waldo Banning of Old Lyme, Connecticut. Now, I don't know whether you know as much about naval as you do about military matters, Major Eliot. This question is about naval matters. Name the ship, famous in verse, by the way, we have to get 2 out of 3 on this, famous in verse, whose captain and crew were always calm, even if the weather was not? Mr. Adams. Name the ship.
The Walloping Window
The
Blind.
Walloping Window Blind. And can you document your answer, Mr. Adams? And you tell us...
The captain's mate was very sedate. Yet
That-
fond of amusement, too.
That's true, Mr. Adams. Those aren't the
He
lines
played
I'm searching
hopscotch
for.
with the starboard watch while the
Something.
captain tickled the crew.
I could listen I could listen to you forever if this weren't so expensive, Mr. Adams. Those, of course, are lines exactly quoted
Oh, a
from the Walloping
capital
Window
ship
Blind.
it begins, doesn't it?
Capital ship for an ocean trip with the Walloping Window Blind.
Good enough.
No gale that blew dismayed her crew or
That'll do.
troubled the captain's
That's
mind.
what I was searching for, Mr. Adams. Thank you very much. Now, whose captain smoked a pipe and was defiant, scornful of the weather? Mr. Adams again, our naval authority.
The captain of the Hesperus.
Captain of the Hesperus. Now, can you give me any lines which would prove your answer to be true?
The skipper, he spoke never a word. His pipe was in his mouth.
Oh, I think you just made that up as you went along.
But it's good.
How do you like that, Mr.
And he
Taylor?
watched,
Yeah.
and he watched how the veering wind did blow. The smoke now north, now south.
How you got that
Doesn't
rhyme out, I don't know. I guess that's right. It sounds
South
right.
doesn't rhyme with mouth.
Yes, it does. But I think you just made that up, too. Last night the moon had a golden ring, and tonight no moon we see. The skipper, he blew a whiff from his pipe, and a scornful,
Scornful laugh,
laughed
laughed he.
Whose captain lost his life keeping the prow of his boat against the shore so all the passengers could escape disaster? The eminent naval authority again, Mr. Adams.
The captain of the Julie Plant.
Of the what?
Julie Plant.
From what poem is this?
The wreck of the Julie Plant by William Henry Drummond.
He kept the prow of the boat against the shore.
One
so-
arp,
No.
some Canadian
but
thing
one
from the
arpent
shore.
from the shore.
One arpent from
How
the
about
shore.
it,
That
Mr.
isn't the
Taylor?
one.
Taylor says no, Adams. Taylor says... What do you say, Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Taylor says nothing.
All right. I thought I had you there.
But it just wasn't the Julie Plant.
I don't
that's
think it
all.
was, Mr. Adams. I think it was the Prairie Belle. The
By
story of
John
Jim
Hay.
Bludso by John Hay. I'll hold her nozzle agin the bank till the last galoot's ashore. Remember that?
Second thought, Adams.
No,
2 out of
don't
3.
remember.
2 out of 3. We're all right so far. Now, let's see. What have we done so far? We generally strive for perfection, but our experts make it an impossibility this evening, having already lost $10 for Canada Dry. However, Mr. Cross is usually the man to speak of perfection. What do you say, Mr. Cross?
Well, I could say that, speaking of perfection, sparkling Canada Dry water is the perfect mixer, etc., etc. But I won't, because those facts are already obvious and well known. No, Mr. Fadiman, tonight I'll speak about the perfect wife, since as a result of last week's talk, one of our listeners has been doing some research in Joe Miller's definitions. The perfect wife, he writes, is the kind you can give a handful of buttons to and say, here, sew some shirts on these. Well, there's a great deal of truth in that definition. But uxorial perfection, as our Latin expert, Mr. Kieran, might term it, goes much further than sewing shirts on buttons. The really perfect wife is one who keeps a good supply of sparkling Canada Dry water on hand. For a lively club soda is a necessity now that entertaining at home has become an important part of our lives. Sparkling Canada Dry water is relished not only by the invited guest, but also by the surprise or drop-in unexpectedly kind of guest. But all kinds enjoy the better taste, extra liveliness, and longer life that Canada Dry water gives to their favorite drinks. When speaking of perfection in club soda, you're speaking of sparkling Canada Dry water.
Mr. Cross, your joke routine was perfect, but your timing, well, 72 seconds is a little long. Long, but good. Now, the next question comes from Wild Rose Mellencamp of Lynn, Massachusetts. It's a single question. Listen carefully, gentlemen. All the courses of the following dinner will be ready at the same time, provided you put them up to cook at approximately 15-minute intervals. In what order would you start them cooking? Now, the courses are lima beans, a 4-pound cut of roast beef, which you like rare, hot biscuits, and baked Idaho potatoes. Now, is the problem clear? In what order would you put them up if you put them up to cook at approximately 15-minute intervals? Mr. Taylor.
Well, my estimate would be the...
Beginning with the one that you put in first.
Yeah.
All right.
I would say roast beef,
Roast beef.
lima beans, potatoes, and biscuits.
Well, you'd get something burnt. That was a good stab. Mr.
Good
Kieran.
try, anyhow.
I'd put in the meat first,
Yes.
and I would put in the potatoes second, the biscuits third, and the lima beans last.
You're crazy.
Well, you'd get
Biscuits
something burnt,
third.
too. You'd get
I
biscuits
usually
burnt. You'd get biscuits burnt. Now, Mr. Adams, would you like to spoil this dinner entirely for us by giving us your version?
I'd starve.
I think it might be simpler. Gentlemen, the proper order would be roast beef, as Mr. Taylor and Mr. Kieran said, which would take about an hour to do, 4 pounds. Then the baked Idaho potatoes, which would take about 45 minutes. Then beans, about 30 minutes. And then the hot biscuits, Mr. Kieran, about 15 minutes.
That's right.
Unless you like your biscuits petrified. Very clever of you, Major Eliot, to make no stab at this.
I was trying to get a
that
high
sends-
sign from my wife down in the audience, but I couldn't make it.
Well, I only got
sends-
my beans in too soon.
Well, you did pretty well.
They're no
Nothing-
good anyway.
I don't like them
I
anyhow.
don't like them.
$10 to Miss Mellencamp at Lynn, Massachusetts. And a set of the encyclopedia. And a question now coming up from Lucille M. Arnold of Denver, Colorado. It's about hands, H-A-N-D-S. Whose hand or hands would never be clean? We have to go back to your literature for this, Mr. Taylor.
Lady Macbeth.
Lady
I should
Macbeth,
say.
yes. Can you give us the line?
Oh, come now.
No, you do that.
All the, come on, Adams.
Not all
Perfumes of...
Mr. Kieran.
Kieran
All
can do
the
it.
perfumes of Araby will ever sweeten this little hand, or something, words
Yes.
to that effect.
Well, that's exactly it. All the perfumes of Arabia will
That
not
last
sweeten
sentence
this
isn't
little
in
hand.
the play. Word to that effect.
By the way, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Kieran is pretty helpful on your answers, don't you think?
Listen, I supply the raw material of the fact, and he does the embroidery.
Just a
That's fair
decoration,
enough.
yes, that's right. Now, whose hand or hands became hairy after he took a drink? Became hairy after he took a drink. Nasty situation.
Frightful.
Does that baffle you, gentlemen?
Esau.
No.
Oh, he must have turned
the
into something. huh?
Answer is Dr. Jekyll. Remember, after he took the potion and became Mr. Hyde, he became very ugly looking, and among other things that happened to him, his hands became very hairy. That's one wrong.
Don't
We
believe
have to
it.
get the next quite right. You don't believe in Santa Claus, Mr. Taylor?
It's all right.
All right. Whose hand or hands rules the world? Mr. Adams.
That rocks the cradle.
Cradle. Oh,
Yeah, I guess that's pretty good. Were you going to say that, Major Eliot, too? And Mr. Kieran, they all had their hands up. Yes, the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. Who wrote the poem?
Anon.
No,
some liar.
it's a good guess. William Stewart Ross. R. Murray of Los Angeles, California, asks you to explain these two terms. First, the Anaconda Policy. Second, the Schlieffen Plan. What's the Anaconda Policy? Anaconda Policy? Mr. Kieran.
Well, at a guess, I'll say the anaconda is the enveloping process of squeezing some country or party or army to death by encircling it and crushing it.
That's a very good guess, and it's true. But how was the term used specifically?
Why, it's used in encircling one of those nations that was swallowed up over there in Europe.
Well, you might today. It was used, I think, for the first time.
Mining.
I beg pardon? Mr.
In
Adams?
mining.
In mining? No, you're thinking of Anaconda
I'm
Copper?
thinking of the Anaconda mine.
Kind of remote. You're dreaming this evening, Mr. Adams.
Well, I thought maybe they strangled the competitors.
No, during the War of 1861 to 1865, the Anaconda Policy was the military technique used by the Northern forces against the South. Remember that, Major Eliot? Remember the general policy followed?
I remember
by
the technique, but I don't remember ever having heard the term.
Well, that's why you're on this program, to learn, Major Eliot. to learn.
From those military.
Yes, the Union
experts.
sought to constrict or crush the South by blockading its ports and cutting it off from the West by Mississippi campaigns and sending Sherman down to cut off the Deep South and marching down to Virginia to take Richmond, and that squeezed the South until it was powerless. Now, how about the Schlieffen Plan? The Schlieffen Plan. Major Eliot.
The Schlieffen Plan was the strategical plan devised by Field Marshal Count von Schlieffen when he was chief of the German General Staff for an attack on France. And
Yes,
its
so-
essential elements were a holding force in Alsace-Lorraine on the German left and a heavy right wing pivoting around to encircle and crush the French armies going through Belgium.
Yes. Is there any application of that Schlieffen Plan, do you think, to some of the military maneuvers going on today, Major, would you say?
Most of the officers who are now general officers in the German army were lieutenant colonels and majors in the World War and were brought up on the theories of Count von Schlieffen.
Yes.
And his general idea, the single or the double envelopment, the canai, as he calls it. He wrote a book called Canai, which is used as a text at Leavenworth. And that general theory was applied by the Germans in Poland, where they executed first an envelopment of the Polish corridor from East Prussia and Pomerania.
Do you think they're apt to use it on the French front, though? Is there any indication they're going to use the Schlieffen plan against the French?
No, there's no indication that they're going to use exactly that plan.
Unless they
French.
should use Holland as their Belgium in this case.
Even so, they'd have to come through Belgium yet, and the Belgian defenses are far more formidable than they were in 1914.
Thank you very much,
It isn't
Major.
quite applicable.
Not quite. Thank you very much. That is satisfactory answer, it seems to me, on that question. How about this one from Joseph Solari of Everett, Massachusetts? The title of what poem by popular poet laureate is often quoted by Arthur Donovan while he works? We have to get 2 out of 3 on this, gentlemen. Arthur Donovan. Mr. Kieran. Who is Arthur Donovan, Mr. Kieran?
He's a prize fight referee, and I take it that the poem is Break, Break, Break by the late Lord Tennyson.
That's right, Mr. Kieran. You try and fool Mr. Kieran. Now, the title of what poem by either John Greenleaf Whittier or Ralph Waldo Emerson would apply when Casey Stengel lectured his men? This is not so easy. Who is Casey Stengel, Mr. Kieran?
He's the manager of the Boston Bees, and a very good manager, too.
Good enough. And you couldn't tell us what poem by Whittier or Emerson would apply when Mr. Stengel lectured his men. Well, it would be perhaps Telling the Bees by Whittier. Stay at home, pretty bees, fly not hence.
He'd never say that.
Or the Humble Bee. The title of what poem, one wrong on that, the title of what poem by Elizabeth Akers Allen usually gets quick response from Joe Lewis? Mr. Adams.
Rock me to sleep, Mother, rock me to sleep.
That's right, Mr. Adams. Thank you very much. Rock me to sleep, Mother, rock me to sleep. That gives us 2 out of 3, which was all we were required to get. Now, a brief word from that Canada Dry expert. Shall we listen to Mr. Milton Cross?
Soon we will be making plans to attend one or perhaps both of the 2 great fairs on either side of the continent. We look forward with enthusiasm to viewing the marvelous spectacles these fairs afford. To some, it will mean thousands of miles of travel, to others, a few city blocks. But in your travels, when the time comes for refreshments, you can always find Canada Dry Ginger Ale. And it's always delightfully refreshing, full of thirst-quenching sparkle. At roadside stands, at clubs, hotels, and restaurants, you can be sure that this world-famous ginger ale will have the same mellow aroma, the same distinctively different flavor. For the world over, Canada Dry is made with the finest ingredients, with the most scientific care, under a special formula that never has been duplicated. For Canada Dry is the champagne of ginger ales.
A memo from our financial department reveals at the evening's goings-on that it cost Canada Dry a total of $20 and 2 sets of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Mr. Taylor and Major Eliot, thank you on behalf of Canada Dry for joining us tonight. Now, next week at this time, our triple threat will be with us, John Kieran, Oscar Levant, Franklin P. Adams. And as our guest of honor, we announce the distinguished moving picture actor, the vice president of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, currently appearing in the new hit Heavenly Express, Mr. Harry Carey. Remember, listeners, send your letters with questions and the correct answers to Canada Dry, 1 Pershing Square, New York City.
Remember, Canada Dry Ginger Ale and sparkling water are on sale in convenient sizes at your favorite neighborhood stores. The large family size sells for only 15 cents. The medium size, 12 ounces, 3 for 25 cents. And remember, too, if your community does not observe daylight saving time, information, please, will be heard 1 hour earlier beginning next week.